Em Atlanta, na Geórgia, um caso em particular iria assombrar especialistas e médicos. O cardiologista Michael Saban também estava estudando experiências de quase morte quando se deparou com um caso extraordinário.
Pam's case is unique in the fact that she had her near-death experience at a time that she was fully instrumented and under medical observation. And I think if you wanted to construct a laboratory experiment where you had someone and took them as close to death or perhaps even into death as possible and then bring them back and ask them what they could recall, Pam's case probably comes closest to that than any other so far that we know of.
Pam Reynolds era mãe e uma conhecida cantora e compositora, mas em 1991 ela ficou gravemente doente.
I began to experience extreme dizziness, loss of speech, some difficulty in moving the body. And it was at that point that my physician recommended that I have a CAT scan. And the CAT scan, of course, showed the aneurysm. And it was a big one. It was a giant aneurysm. I was referred to a neurologist, and the neurologist gave me little or no chance of survival at all.
Mas havia uma última esperança para Pam. Ela fez aquela que imaginava ser sua última viagem. 3.000 quilômetros até o Instituto de Neurologia Barrow, em Phoenix, no Arizona. Contrariando os prognósticos, o neurocirurgião Robert Spetzler decidiu assumir o caso de Pam.
What we're looking at is the aneurysm that she had, which is at the very base of the brain. This is the balloon that can burst and cause this incredible catastrophe in the patient's brain. Why is this so difficult in this particular case? I think probably easiest to see here by when you look at this plastic model of the head and we turn it around and we take out the top of the brain. What we're really talking about is that aneurysm is all the way at the very base of the brain. And that is why it's so incredibly difficult to get there. So you have to go somehow through the skull, because remember the face is here and the neck is down here, to get down to this very difficult spot.
Pam seria submetida a uma cirurgia muito delicada. Sua temperatura corporal seria reduzida, ficando entre 10 e 15 graus. Seu coração e respiração parariam, sua função cerebral cessaria e todo o sangue seria retirado de sua cabeça. Ela teria de estar clinicamente morta durante toda a cirurgia.
What we want to do is we want to bring that brain to a halt. We don't just want the brain to be asleep. We want the metabolic activity of the brain to stop. Every measurable output that the body puts out really disappears completely, so that you have no measurable neuronal activity whatsoever. Prior to the operation starting, a lot of activity goes on. The patient is put to sleep. The eyes are taped shut. There are little clicking devices put in each ear in order to monitor the brain. The patient is then completely covered. The only thing that's really exposed is the area of the head where we work.
I don't remember an operating room. I don't remember seeing Dr. Spetzler at all. I was with a fellow. One of his fellows was with me at that time. After that, nothing. Absolutely nothing. Until the sound. And the sound was unpleasant, was guttural. It was reminiscent of being in a dentist's office. And I remember the top of my head tingling, and I just sort of popped out of the top of my head. And I was then looking down at the body. I knew it was my body, but I didn't care. My vantage point was sort of sitting on the doctor's shoulder. I remember the instrument in his hand. It looked like the handle to my electric toothbrush. I had assumed that they were going to open the skull with a saw. I had heard the term saw, but what I saw looked a lot more like a drill than a saw. It even had little bits that were kept in this case that looked like the case that my father stored his socket wrenches in when I was a child. And I remember distinctly hearing a female voice saying,
"We have a problem. Our arteries are too small. Try the other side."
It seemed to come from further down on the table. I do remember wondering, what are they doing? Because this is brain surgery. And what had happened was they accessed the femoral arteries in order to drain the blood. And I did not understand that.
In the process of my study, I went and interviewed Dr. Spetzler and looked at his operative report, and I found that what she saw from her out-of-body experience seemingly corresponded very accurately to what had actually occurred. She looked at a bone saw that was being used to cut open her skull. I didn't have any idea what this thing looked like. She described it as an electric toothbrush, which I thought was ridiculous. I had to send off for a picture of this saw to Fort Worth, Texas, to confirm whether or not what she said it looked like actually was accurate. And I was astounded when I saw the picture. It indeed does resemble an electric toothbrush.
I don't think that the observations she made were based on what she experienced as she went into the operating room theater. They were just not available to her. For example, the drill and so on, those things are all covered up. They're not visible. They were inside their packages. You really don't begin to open until the patient is completely asleep so that you maintain a sterile environment.
She also heard a conversation during the operation between Dr. Spetzler and the cardiovascular surgeons who were cutting into her legs to hook her up to the heart-lung machine. When the cardiac surgeon incised her right groin, she found that her veins and arteries were too small, and she had to go over to the left side. And there was some conversation at the time between the doctors. Pam accurately recalled hearing that conversation.
At that stage in the operation, nobody can observe, hear in that state. And I find it inconceivable that your normal senses, such as hearing, let alone the fact that she had clicking modules in each ear, that there was any way for her to hear those through normal auditory pathways.
So again, this is very suggestive of the fact that there was some sort of extrasensory perception or out-of-body experience or whatever occurring at the time that was allowing Pam to hear accurately and seemingly see accurately.